Hello, everyone, and welcome to the AMA's webinar on the end of the cookie. My name is Ken Lempit, and I'll serve as your first phase moderator here, just giving people time to log in. We had more than 100 registrations, so there's a lot of interest in our topic. So it's the end of the cookie. So marketers get ready. Digital tracking is going to change. Before we get started, I want to welcome everyone here, our panel, and our sponsors, which include Alpha Graphics of Stanford, Altamira, Austin Lawrence Group, Media Associates, Oracle, The Trade Desk, and Wonderland. And we're really just pleased to have everybody here and proud of those associations. So thank you so much. Before we get started, I just want to do a little plug for AMA. Your local AMA chapter in Southwestern Connecticut also covers Westchester County kind of informally. And we run between 10 and 12 events a year. And we're really excited that we think we can see the end of virtual events coming, though the really large registration numbers of our virtual events kind of encourages us that we should probably find some way to include virtual or hybrid events as we go on. In addition to the events we run, the chapter provides opportunities for networking, career growth, building your business if you're a service provider. There are lots of ways that the local chapter can help you advance your business and advance your career. And there's probably never been a better time to join AMA, as the cost of joining has dropped in half from historical norms, and there is no longer a separate chapter membership fee. So for $149 a year, much less than my prior Starbucks habit, you can have a national and chapter membership in AMA, not only getting the membership benefits locally, but as well the training and discounts on programming that come through AMA. So if you're interested, please go to our website, amasouthernct.org, or you can just go to ama.org and join up. So with that, I'd like to hand it over to Ben. Ben, if you'd be kind enough to take the show from here and get us going. I think we're doing pretty well. We're up to almost 40 participants. Just one last thing. In a webinar format, we have both a Q&A and the chat box. We'll try and find your questions wherever you put them in. And I think it'll be best to just keep putting them in. And if we think they're better for the Q&A part of the program, Ben, you'll hold on to them. And if you want to get them done in real time with the panelists, you can do that as well. So Ben, take it away.
All right. Welcome, everybody. Excited to have you here. We have a really great panel tonight to talk about a pretty important issue. And I want to lead off by introducing everybody. We'll make this brief, but Ben Elberg, wave there, Ben. He's a senior account executive at the Trade Desk. And as a lot of you know, the Trade Desk is the preeminent demand-side platform, cutting edge for digital targeting of advertising. Very, very strong, and they have some very innovative solutions about the end of cookies they'll be talking about today. I'm also very pleased to welcome an old colleague, and now he's spread his wings and gone very far, Nate Carter, who's head of global agency relationships for Oracle. Oracle is one of the largest data companies in the world, and Nate has a bird's eye view of a lot of what's going on both on the data side and the agency side, so he'll have some great perspective. And then from Media Associates, we have two of our esteemed colleagues, Jesse Rosenshine, head of digital, vice president at Media Associates, and expert in all things digital strategy, and Tim Lathrop, a senior digital director at Media Associates. And Tim is a execution specialist. If the internet crashed, he probably could rebuild it in over a weekend. I think you've done that before, Tim. So glad to have you all.
It's just a night.
Exactly. And I'm going to kick off with a story. Our story begins in 1994. 1994 was a few years ago. If you do the math, it's just under 10,000 days ago. Gasoline costs about $1.06 a gallon. There was a major earthquake in 1994 in Los Angeles. Some of you may remember a highway going down. And a very talented woman won a skating championship called Tanya Harding. So kind of to put that all in perspective. But 1994 was an interesting year. It was the year that the digital cookie was invented. And I'm going to kick off and tell you a little bit of story, and then I'm going to pass it to Jesse to fill in the blanks on what they were trying to do. But it was interesting when the internet was first created, it had a problem. There was no way for websites to actually remember anybody. And if you think about going to a shopping cart and adding a pair of sneakers in a shopping cart and then leaving that page for a second, the shopping cart wouldn't remember you. Or if you think about an online bank service trying to figure out how to let you in to see the next page of your account, every time you change the page, it would not be able to recognize you. So a very bright developer named Lou Montulli, he was one of the early designers of some of the early browsers for the internet. He had an idea of using a little bit of code, and he called it a magic cookie at the time. But the idea was a website, a web page. When you visited it, it would download that code onto your computer into your browser software, and then when you went to another page, it would check that code and recognize you. And the initial idea was really not about marketing at all. It was really about making the internet easier, websites in particular, to make them easy. Well, fast forward a few years, and marketers, being marketers, we do what we always do. We said, hey, that's an interesting bit of technology. How can we use it to advertise and influence people? And so we learned how to stitch all those cookies together and chase you around the internet. And that's the world we live in now. So it's an interesting evolution, but what's interesting is that this tool that was meant to make the web easier actually made the web a little bit less friendly for users. Marketers, when they do it right, they personalize advertising. We do this at our agency, Media Associates, matching supply and demand. I think we all want to see things that we're interested in, especially in advertising. But a lot of retargeting came a little too crowded. There were concerns about privacy, and actually some websites started to have slow load speeds. So what was meant, ironically, as a tool to make the web easier became a little bit problematic. That brings us to today, and I want to turn it over to my colleague, Jesse Rosenshine, who's going to tell you a little bit about the timeline of what is going on with the cookie next.
Absolutely. Thanks, Ben. So I think it's important to note that while this is a really hot topic right now, this has actually been going on for years to some degree. So Safari and Firefox are two browsers that eliminated cookies years ago. And I can actually remember, and I know Tim was part of that conversation too, back in 2017, we had a client who was panicked about Safari's ITP update, which was basically their intelligent tracking prevention update, and they eliminated cookies. But the difference today and the conversation within the last year that's really been unfolding is that Google announced it will eliminate cookies next. And so not only is Google the last leg of the stool to fall, but it's also the biggest. It has more than 65% of browser market share. So the reason, and there are a couple driving forces, is that digital privacy is just becoming a more important part of the consumer conversation. The two main factors driving the change are consumer preferences and government policies. In general, there are a lot of different studies out there with different rates, but in general, consumers are basically stating that they prefer privacy over personalization. It's just more important to them. And so really kind of phase one of all of this was GDPR and CCPA, terms that I'm sure you've probably heard by now, but really government policies put in place that enforce the need for websites to notify visitors and or provide an opt-in option around their cookie tracking usage. And so in theory, this gives consumers more control over their privacy, but the reality is how many consumers really truly understand, people who aren't marketers, people who aren't technical or advertising or media people, truly understand what cookie tracking means and how it works. So while you're giving them this control, they don't necessarily know what they're agreeing to. And the big deal is, these government policies that are in place, non-compliance comes with really hefty penalties for organizations. Fines are $23 million or 4% of your annual turnover, whichever one's greater. Pretty large numbers there. So, lots of organizations invest in cookie consent management systems. Some of you have probably heard of OneTrust or Cookie Pro or CookieBot to facilitate this pop-up policy notification. But again, if only 13% of consumers really know what a cookie is and 45% kind of understand, what are they really agreeing to? So that's kind of the tipping point that's causing cookie elimination.
So it sounds, Jesse, like at the end of 2021, this is really when it's going to change. If we take it up one level from technology, I want to turn it over to Nate Carter. A question for you, Nate, is if this is really all about personalizing advertising and using data to measure, what happens to data next, Nate?
Yeah, not much. I mean, I think the key is to understand that the cookie facilitated two things. One is data capture, and that's when you talk about ads that are following you around the internet. That would be retargeting. And so you go to a site, a piece of code is placed in your browser on that site. And then as you go to other pages, you see ads for that product that you searched for. The other use case, if you will, for the cookie was really data delivery. And this is information, whether it be CRM or other information that resides offline that could be delivered online via the cookie. I think what is going away more than anything is the ability to to capture data through browsing activity in a way that's non-user consented. And that's really probably a good thing. The ability to continue to deliver relevant advertising with data as a backbone, the way that it happens and the method will change. And I think a lot of the changes are going to be more anonymized, where people are either part of cohorts, they're part of a larger group, or there's no personally identifiable information. But the data science and the work that will go into the back end in terms of building marketing campaigns and enabling brands and advertisers to reach the right consumer will continue to evolve in a way that is much more sensitive to consumer privacy and is frankly better for the ecosystem.
So that's interesting. And it's funny, Nate, when we were researching a white paper on this at Media Associates, my colleague here, Tim Lathrop, did a ton of research. And what Tim, kind of uncovered was there are a lot of other great emerging ways out there to try to use data to find an individual. Tim, can you give kind of the lay of the land? Like, what are some of the top things you see on the horizon that are going to replace the cookie?
Yeah, I mean, I think to be candid, I think we've already been past the cookie in a lot of cases. So most platforms, most data partners aren't even really relying on cookies anymore, just because of the limited use of it was really providing. So the big thing that everyone's really talking about of targeting nowadays is your own data, your first party data, CRM data. That's mission critical for everyone. And I think the biggest thing that we can really set everyone is really figure out that, make sure that you have a process in place, ensuring that, as Jesse alluded to before with like using a OneTrust or platform like that, ensuring that you're getting it in the right fashion, but being able to leverage it and use it. Because the nice thing about that is you're able to then reach people that you already know have taken an action, whether it's retargeting or doing anything else with that, just to make sure. There's been a lot of talk about, contextual targeting is back and it's never going to go away. But I think there's still, as Nate just alluded to before, audience targeting isn't going away either. Because again, all of the partners that have been, the Oracles of the world, the Axioms of the world, they're using different technology nowadays that are anonymized, so you're not able to know who it is to be able to target people. And it can be cohorts just like Google and stuff like that. So we're still going to have those capabilities, but I think what we've all been saying is that it's really putting better data into us, even in many cases, but also ensuring that people's private information is being shared. And one of the challenges with cookies has always been is that data, you don't know how long it's been there for. It could be really late and it could be out there for a long time, that information. And a lot of data warehouses use that data, and it could have been 3 years old. So nowadays we can use signals. So we're using a lot of search data to be able to target people based off the recency. So nowadays we can target people, they did a search within the last couple hours, we can target them with the display ad. So it's actually getting more powerful. And I think it's really just educating people and testing and seeing what works for every business.
It's interesting. The cookie in my mind has become a proxy so closely associated with finding an individual that we almost assume a cookie is an individual, but it really isn't. There's a funny story in New England in the 1600s that tax collectors would try to estimate income by counting the number of windows in a house because glass was expensive. And so if you had 20 windows, we knew that you made a lot of money, we'd send you a big tax bill. So it's always been a proxy. But what I find fascinating, the Trade Desk has been on the forefront of coming up with a different type of what they call a unified ID. And I'd like to turn it over to Ben Elberg to give us a little bit of a synopsis about what you guys have been cooking over there.
Yeah, thanks, Ben, and thanks everyone for having me. So last year, we realized that there was an opportunity ahead of the industry should Google actually move forward with eliminating the cookie. So we took the formula that the IAB Tech Lab created with Rearc and actually started building it. And you all know it now as Unified ID 2.0. So what's really important to note is that while we're building it, we don't intend it for it to be a Trade Desk ID. It won't work, in our opinion, if we or any other for-profit company actually owns this ID. So Prebid has already agreed to serve as an operator, and there may be more operators. The IAB Tech Lab actually has indicated that they'll be a likely administrator for the ID. And what UID2 is actually accomplishing is preserving the value exchange of the internet, which is where consumers get to see free content in the form of news, entertainment, sport, live sports, et cetera, you name it, in exchange for relevant and hopefully infrequent advertising. This is done through UID through email-based logins without a password to help publishers maintain high CPMs and keep creating great content and enabling journalism to thrive. So I'd be remiss to not say that UID is going to be open source and interoperable with all other IDs that are also similarly open sourced, such as LiveRamp's IDL or Neustar's Fabric. And it's important to also call out that we launched the ID in beta last week, and we expect it to take a few weeks to test and tweak to see how it'll work, but more to come on that soon.
Well, I'd like to, I love where you're going, Ben, and we've talked to the Trade Desk a lot, and in my mind, there are kind of three really interesting potential new solutions of which the Trade Desk is one. So the Trade Desk, you have a unified ID 2.0 that tries to identify Nate Carter based on his core email address, and wherever he's logged in, you associate, oh, that must be Nate. LiveRamp has a bit of a different solution they're baking. They call it, I believe, authenticated traffic, and I'm sure it's evolving. But they try to somehow match people who have already logged into a website somehow with, the advertiser's own CRM data and make that match. And then the third idea that just came out, I believe a month ago, Google's Flock, FLOC. Nate, to your point, they're ostensibly building cohorts or small groups of people that, while they're not individuals, have the same kind of birds of a feather flock together. So I want to put it out there to, I guess, Tim, I'll hand it to you. What do you see the pros and cons of these three different solutions?
Yeah, definitely starting with the big guy, Google. I think one of the challenges that we see with it is its continued loss of transparency. So as we're all sitting here talking about that, a big part of this is really giving back to the person. Google is kind of taking even more away from that. So with them indicating that it's a cohort, which is understandable. So it's basically like-minded people group. So let's say that if you like sewing, you're going to be grouped in with people like-minded at sewing and have different characteristics. Where I feel that with the Trade Desk is working on with a number of the partners, LiveRamp, they're leveraging a lot of that first-party data and other characteristics to be able to target people, but they're still, but also hashing that so to ensuring that it can't be identified by that single person. And we all know that Google's doing very similar to a lot of it, because they have so much data from their Gmail data as well, and a lot of their data as well. But I think it's really what I'm finding is that, you know, what LiveRamp is doing, what Trade Desk is doing, is they're trying to do it what's best for the people, and Google is really doing it what's best for them, and that's always the challenge, and that's what we're trying to work with. But I think the big thing for all advertisers is that you're probably going to have to use multiple, so it's not going to be one solution fits all. I think that's a big thing.
And just a word to our audience: we did invite Google to attend tonight, so they're not here to defend themselves. I guess the next question I have is, I'll preface it with a personal story. Right before Valentine's Day this year, I thought I was going to do something nice, and I ordered online, my wife, some nice new pajamas. So she went down to the kitchen in the morning after I ordered it, and on our kitchen computer, we have a little Mac down there, there were ads with women in lingerie all over the computer. And she looked at me and said, "Ben, what have you been looking at?" And that was a moment when I was not happy about cookies. But Nate, the question for you is not about lingerie, but aren't we talking about alternatives here? And if the intent is to avoid, if you will, chasing people without their consent, are these systems doing just the same thing? Will they eventually be blocked too? Like, what's the future hold for them?
Yeah, I can't speak right now to anything that Oracle is not directly engaged in. I can say that from our perspective, we're evaluating all of the systems that are out there, and we are doing it with an eye of privacy first, and really users first. And I think, I can't speak to your specific experience. I think what's really key is that the solutions out there, that they're very transparent, they're fully transparent. Our position is that even in the best case scenario, these are not going to be a ubiquitous solution the way that cookies were. If you think about all of the sites that you visited today, how many of those are you willing to log in on? There's going to be people who are using things like Apple's tool, which generates fake email addresses and then really pulls them back. And so there's going to be ways that consumers can avoid necessarily having it assigned to them. And that is part of consumer choice. But at the same time, I think what UD 2.0 is addressing is a very real problem, which is, if you think about all of the sites that you went to today, how many of them would you be willing to pay a monthly subscription to? All of the news sources you went to today, how many of them are you willing to pay a monthly subscription to? And the ones where we see the largest noise being made by privacy advocates, I find it interesting. Those publishers tend to have the most robust reader data operations, where they're harvesting reader data, requiring emails to log in, and they're positioning themselves well to maintain their CPMs. But for me, it's NFL draft season. I go to a lot of incredible sites, low ad content, great data, and I'm probably not going to log into those. So we're looking at how can we continue to help with partners like the Trade Desk drive CPMs, really drive advertiser value in those environments. We're very leaned into our contextual solutions and also with our Moat products, page quality solutions. And that allows advertisers to continue to monetize these sites. And also, most importantly, it allows advertisers to continue to see the same type of return on ad spend that they were seeing previously.
Now, it occurs to me, and this isn't a question I prepped the team for, but Jesse, I'll lob this unexpected question to you. There are going to be sites or platforms that have in their own sort of mini wall garden really great data. So think about Bloomberg, think about the Wall Street Journal, think about WebMD. If you go to Bloomberg and you subscribe, they probably know your job title and a lot about you, and there may be a lot of value there. So Jesse, do you see a flight to quality, and is that going to create some pressure on prices in terms of media buying? What's going to happen when I'm an advertiser and I can't find you here, but I know I can find you within that website? What does that do to the marketplace?
Yeah, I mean, so I think every platform, every publisher is going to have their own unique challenges to tackle cookie depreciation and app tracking transparency changes. those types of first party targeting that publishers offer typically come at a premium. So while I do think we will see more of that, which almost seems like, we're kind of going back in time in a way. I still think, all of these other platforms and walled gardens are impacted as much as anyone else by some of these changes, just in varying degrees. I still think we'll see a really solid mix on media plans. It's just, we'll kind of have to test and learn our way into what that new mix looks like, because the data targeting will change.
Sure.
But at the end of the day, it's a recalibration exercise in my mind.
In a related question, I'm going to jump over to Ben Elberg. We've been talking a lot about consumer impact, but B2B marketing is an enormous arena that a lot of people outside of it don't think about. It's almost even more challenging in business to business. There's a long lead time. There's data that says that a lot of the decision is made way upstream of advertising. So you need to figure out how do you get content in front of people when they're doing research on a B2B solution. Ben, do you have a point of view at the Trade Desk about what the impact of cookie-less feature might be on B2B marketing?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And I think that that's definitely something that is, in the forefront of a lot of marketers' minds today, right, is how to figure that out. So I think that current B2B targeting is still going to be available. Data overlays are still going to be available to enhance B2B targeting. And Tim sort of hit on this earlier. I think that key to all of this is the value of a brand's first party data is going to be more important than ever before. If a brand is able to leverage their first party data, then I think they're going to be well suited to reach their audience, no matter the environment. Mm-hmm.
And Tim, over to you. I think someone brought up retargeting, and when we think of it, like my little pajama story, retargeting is kind of a mixed blessing. It's kind of personalization at brute force. At best, it gives you the next best offer that you may be interested from a brand you love. At worst, it's just friggin' annoying. I think we'd all agree. But cookies are the basis of a lot of retargeting. What happens to the classic retargeting channel post cookie?
Well, I think what advertisers are going to find and marketers that this is actually going to help the retargeting in a lot of cases. And the reason I say that is that many people will just say, okay, let's retarget anyone that comes to the website. And you don't know what they could be a current customer, they could have been, not happy with the product, whatever, or, that, and then you just get inundated with ads. So now targeting people, again, based off your first party data, the Trade Desk with what they're doing, even with the Unified 2.0, that's part of that with retargeting there and have capabilities with that as well. You're able to get target people more refined based off of like the ones that really are ready to take action, because many times you get retargeted and there's a reason why you're not ready to take action and you just get inundated. So the thing that we will see from this is that scale will be hurt a little bit, we believe, just coming out of that, but do also believe that a lot of the platforms will be using modeling to enhance that, and similar to Google with the cohorts, that's going to be something that's probably comes out with retargeting as well.
And I want to shift gears now. And this is something that probably appeals to more senior marketers, because this whole conversation is very important, but it's felt very digital, very tactical. But I think what a lot of marketers don't think about is the cookie supports a lot of tracking. And if your website is the end of your funnel, or you have a call center on a website, a lot of that tracking is going to be a little wonky. If you can't follow people around the web, you can't tell if they come to your website. So Jesse, I want to turn it to you. I know that you do a ton of work in analytics on digital. What happens when I serve 1,000 impressions and I can't tell if those impressions brought Sally Smith to my website? What happens next?
Yeah, so there are going to be certain solutions that surface. So I'll use Facebook as an example, right? They will be they have a product called Conversions API that they're pushing. So you're going to see products out there that are server to server communications via API that help you still have visibility into those same types of metrics, and also have some of the same, and to Tim's point, even richer capabilities in terms of retargeting. So you're still going to see the same types of metrics in your reporting. Visualization won't change if you're using a data visualization tool. But due to changes in tracking and attribution windows, to Tim's point earlier, you're likely to see a change in scale. And because you're giving less time and less possibility to give a credit to a certain media channel, that's probably going to present itself initially to you as a marketer as a decrease in efficiency. And it's not necessarily that media could be working just as hard for you, but you're going to kind of have to recalibrate your benchmarks based on some of those changes that you will see.
So Oracle is a really interesting, fascinating company. And if anyone on this call is intrigued, I'd encourage you. Oracle publishes a lot of white papers, including data dictionaries about data sources. So Nate, I want to turn it to you about consumers and this idea that is supposed to theoretically enhance privacy, which I think no one would argue is a bad thing, but are there going to be any bad side effects? In other words, do I have to log in more often? Do I have to fill out more passwords? Is there an actual potential negative to end users? And what do you think might play out there, Nate?
Yeah, I think there's a couple. It's interesting. We sit at the forefront of data gathering. We have a CDP. We help brands manage a ton of first-party data. Oracle was started in the 70s as a database company. And so it's literally what we do. And the first potential negative is you need to think about security. So just getting first-party data is wonderful. If your brand has a data breach, then that is very negative. So that's the first risk. The more data you ingest and the more personal information you have about your customers, the more important it is to make sure that data is secure. And the cost of not securing that data far outweighs any marketing costs. I think the second thing is that reach and frequency. It already exists in silos, whether you're on YouTube or Facebook or the free internet. You are going to have different silos where reach and frequency are managed. And I think right now, there's a lot of uncertainty at an individual level, at a device level. Are you going to see the same ad over and over and over again? How will marketers manage reach and frequency? I think that's something that is really important to be thinking about just at a very baseline level and something we've taken for granted. But
that's fascinating. It's almost the inverse of what we're trying to do. We're trying to make it better for the user, but we may end up blowing out advertising on individual users and wasting marketing dollars. That's really fascinating.
You won't within the walled gardens, which is one of the dangers of allowing walled garden ecosystems to dictate essentially public policy. Is those dictates tend to benefit the dictator by definition.
That was so eloquently said. I have no idea which organization you're talking about. So, hey, I want to turn it to a question from the audience. And everyone online, we have a chat window over on the side. So feel free, please, to add some questions and we'll try to entertain them as we go. We have one from an Ellie B. Ellie says, what concerns me is the creepy factor area is that privacy compromise is not necessarily one-to-one. To skim through it, I'm a marketer, but I also don't want my privacy compromised. As marketers, I think we'll be more successful if we support Google's move on cookies and get creative and empathize with consumers. What do you guys think? So to rephrase that, I think Ellie is saying we should get aboard the train with Google and not target so much. What do you think about that? Let me go over to Ben on that one.
Yeah, I think that with Flock, there are, and you're seeing it in some of the news that's breaking relative to how they're thinking about testing it in Europe, right? That there's privacy concerns that need to be considered with Flock, right? And it's that cohort, so it's not going to be that one-to-one targeting. Like the way that they're thinking about Flock is to Nate's point, if I can make an assumption and think that he was talking about Google earlier, I think that it's going to be really interesting to see how that plays out relative to privacy. I think that that's something that, to Jesse's point earlier, right? Consumers are more concerned with their privacy than they are about personalization. So I think that that's just something that should be considered when thinking about moving towards leveraging Flock as your identity source.
Tim, what do you think? Should we all get aboard the Google train and retrench as marketers from targeting? Is our core strategy, have we gone too far, Tim? What do you think?
Well, I mean, I think I wouldn't say getting completely on the train going. I think you know, as Jesse alluded to before, like Apple Safari has been doing this for a couple of years now. Like the cookie thing is something that should be gone. The cookie thing is something that has, you know, it's off to the sunset now, and really should be something that we've evolved. And I think as, you know, every partner that we work with, every vendor that we speak to, they already have things that, you know, almost a year into it, that they're not using cookies anymore for a lot of their targeting audiences. So in that sense, yes. What concerns me with what Google does for a lot of their products, and we do a lot of work with Google, it's just the transparency side of it. So even if it's just, you know, just being able to see that, just the data, so we can optimize accordingly, that's what we're missing. And that's, as someone in the platform all the time, that's what I'm really concerned about, is that now we can't optimize campaigns, even if it's not down to that individual, but just really understanding and being able to make sure that our clients' dollars are, you know, work as effectively as possible.
Now, a related issue, I'm going to change gears here a little bit. We've been talking a lot about browsers and desktop, but we all have a thing in our pocket called mobile devices. And my colleague here, Jesse Rosenshine at Media Associates, just published a really fantastic white paper about Apple. And Apple is making some similar changes too. Now, there are a lot of weird acronyms about MAIDs and IDFAs. So Jesse, if you could just bring it down a little bit for us, but can you talk to a little bit about what's going on in the mobile ecosystem in marketing?
Sure. So everyone who has an Apple device, an iPhone, is familiar with iOS updates, right? So the iOS update that is on the horizon, and we have partners who tell us that they have contextual clues that this is happening not only this spring, but like potentially in weeks, right? What's going to happen is, and I would think of this as similar to the notification and opt-in situation with GDPR and CCPA that we saw on websites. This iOS update, when users make the update to their phone, to the software, will essentially require all apps in the phone to prompt users with an app tracking transparency opt-in. So similar to the cookies on a website, if you're in a browser, this is on your device. And when you go to an app, it's going to say, do you want this device to, do you want to track, can we track you or can we not within this app, right? So
what do you think is going to happen? You think most people will say yes, Jesse?
I don't actually. So the industry, no one really knows what the end opt-in rate will be, but the widely accepted metric right now is that 10 to 15% opt-in rate will be optimistic. So, and that affects, the biggest one that we all know that affects is Facebook, right? So we're already working through changes with our clients, but it changes attribution ability. It changes the amount of conversion events that you can track. And so it's one of these things where it's similar to cookies, right? But instead of browser level, it's device level, and more specifically, it's your app usage behaviors that it tracks.
So a lot of windows are closing, and we had a question come in from a Melanie. I know you, Melanie. That Jesse, you mentioned that something like 60% of people use Google cookies going away. But if you use Bing and other browsers, can they still use cookies, or are all browsers getting rid of cookies? Can you kind of clarify that?
Yeah, I mean, Tim is my go-to on Bing, Yahoo, but Google is a leader in the space, so Google taking the dive here. essentially means that pretty much everyone else
So
has
Apple,
to follow suit.
Firefox, Google are shutting it down.
Yeah, and so your smaller browsers, they're really going to have no choice at this point.
Okay. I want to ask Nate a question, kind of one level up from individual targeting, but beyond using cookies to chase individuals around the web, really the core strategy is trying to use data, a lot of that generated by third-party cookies, to try to figure out if you're in market. So if I'm an auto retailer and I'm trying to find people that are in market for a certain brand of car, or if I'm looking for people shopping for a leather jacket, a lot of that data, kind of came out of cookies. I know Oracle has a lot of data solutions. What are Grapeshot was one of them. Talk a little bit about Grapeshot and some of the other ways that you see data being available for marketing.
Yeah, I think so. Grapeshot is our contextual engine, and so what that means is that we essentially crawl websites. We don't look at the people on the websites. We look at the websites themselves. And for brands across the spectrum, it's become a real core part of their marketing strategy for two reasons. The first is to ensure that they're in a brand suitable environment. It's a very quick and unpredictable news cycle. And so being able to categorize content and understand the difference between a war in the Game of Thrones and a war that's happening in a part of the world is really key. And so our technology does that. What we're increasingly doing is really working with typically agency partners in order to understand what that solution, which isn't, it's a core solution. One of our largest partners is the Trade Desk. And so we work openly across the ad technology spectrum, but can we start to correlate specific contextual environments to actions? There's the natural one. If I'm on a car shopping website, I'm probably in market for a car, at least aspirationally. But we've been doing a lot of work on a data science end to really understand, can we go beyond that? Can we see that there's certain categories of websites, web pages that are more likely to reach people who are in market for certain products, services, and that allows the advertiser to reach people within that content using programmatic advertising and optimization on a DSP. And at the same time, there's absolutely nothing personally identifiable. It could be your wife, yourself, your children, anyone on that website. All we care about is the content that the ad is adjacent to. We've seen some great results, and it does not touch on PII, and it works in all browser environments.
So that's definitely something I think worth exploring for marketers. And Ben, we just talked about mobile. I noticed that you have a connected TV wall behind you, and connected TVs on your signature line. I guess the Trade Desk must be doing something there, but it's a serious question. We've been thinking about digital as computers or mobile devices, but television is going through a revolution. OTT, CTV. Can you talk a little bit about the impact on how do you personalize on TV as TV link goes digital and cookies kind of go away?
Yeah, it's an awesome question. And I think that the Trade Desk has done a really good job and invested quite heavily in the last 3, 4, 5 years to be able to be in a place today where CTV is probably one of the main attractions to running on our platform. So we actually have in 2020, we year over year doubled our spend on CTV. Some of that is obviously due to the pandemic and people being stuck at home and consuming more content than ever before. But if we're thinking about how we leverage targeting in a CTV environment where there obviously is no cookie, no mobile app IDs, what we're doing there, apologies for the background noise, what we're doing there is leveraging device IDs and other non-personally identifiable IDs to be able to match devices to households. And we leverage a household graph, AdBrain, to be able to facilitate that in conjunction with several other graphs, such as LiveRamp's graph, Oracle's graph, and TapAd's graph as well, to be able to connect, again, all these devices to people, to households, without using cookies and having to rely on cookies.
Ben, you're throwing a lot of really smart acronyms around, but when you say CTV, can you break that down? Like, what does CTV mean? What is that in layman's terms?
Yeah, that's a great question. And the way that we think about CTV at Trade Desk is the biggest screen in the house, the screen that's in your living room and your family room that everyone gathers around, versus OTT, which is over the top, which can be accessed through other devices such as a desktop, mobile, tablet, right? So that's the big core difference in when we're talking about CTV versus OTT.
Got it. Thank you.
Sure.
So I have a question for the whole panel. This is a stumper of a question. It's actually from Jill A. It says, is the cookieless solution, e.g. Unified ID, LiveRamp, a process that advertisers would manage, or the media vendors, or both? My experience using LiveRamp, for instance, is that an advertiser's first-party data would be ingested before going to the media vendor. So I think the question is, wow, I've got solutions, but do I do it? Does my agency do it? Does the vendor do it? How can a marketer sort that out? Let me go over to you, Tim. Maybe you have a point of view on that one.
I mean, I think the big thing is it really won't be on the marketer. It's really before it gets to the marketer. So the client will be able to share that information, for example, just to a LiveRamp, or to the Unified 2.0, how that's working. And then that data will be totally hashed before it's even available for anything else. So I think it's just really important to think about that just like as we all try to do now, if you're using like CRM targeting, no one's really physically touching that data. It's being automatically passed through a secure way to the sources of where it's being used.
Okay. Another question from an Ellie. If you want to give consumers the option to be tracked or not, you have to let them know what's in it for them to be tracked. Consumers often opt in just to get what they want. I think we need more communication in the process. So it's a great question. We're all going to have little alerts popping up here and there, opt in, opt out. What can marketers or publishers do to improve the communication of what's going on to give consumers confidence? Nate, any point of view on that? It's kind of a industry-wide, is it on us to do a better job communicating what we're doing?
Yeah, it's a good point. I think the challenge, frankly, is that the organizations that will be most hurt are not going to be the large corporations that have the largest section and sort of engagement with you. So of course, you're giving Amazon information. You're giving Amazon your home address. You're giving them, they probably know what type of stove you have if you're buying cleaner through them, whether or not you own a dog, maybe what type of car you own. And so I think one of the things that's unfortunate is the folks who will be hurt are going to be the small web publishers who don't have a massive ecosystem or sales force to drive premium CPMs. They can't get put on Jesse's plan because they don't have the web traffic. And they've benefited tremendously from the DSP space. The ones that are going to be hurt are going to be the app developers that have a niche product and have their SDK ripped out because Apple would rather, they've already demonetized publisher CPMs, and now they're offering for pennies on the dollar, you can be part of Apple News. And so what I'm seeing is many organizations that are using privacy as almost a Trojan horse. I noticed a comment about we have to stop the data gathering, but to be honest, the data gathering was never happening with a cookie. Like, go look at your Google Maps and look at your history there and where you've traveled to on GPS coordinates. That's not going anywhere. Amazon's data profile on you is not going anywhere. And so unfortunately, this becomes because Ben's seeing lingerie ads, it becomes a really easy way to get the consumer to look at the shiny object over here, defund small publishers that don't have the voice to fight back, and take more of your consumer dollars and really centralize it into fewer places. And we've seen that with GDPR in the EU and who that's benefited financially on the bottom line. And unfortunately, this taking something that was essentially open source and across and really ubiquitous, and really now containing it where if you have someone's login on a browser, you can still tie maybe their GPS data back to them. Or if you run a DSP that has a massive e-commerce platform, you also, by the way, have a Fire Stick in your TV, you still have all that data on people. That's staying there. What's happening is the small independent guy is being punished, and consumers are saying, "Yay, privacy!" But they're getting less of that, and frankly, more of their wallet is going to a few companies.
That's a great point. I think in our research we found interesting stats. Something like 60 or 70% of all advertising, digital advertising in the U.S. now goes to Amazon, Google, and Facebook. It's very concentrated.
But it's
And I
interesting
want to
that
make this pragmatic. So I think my next couple questions, I want to turn kind of the last 10 minutes of this into kind of action planning. I'll give you a scenario. So I'm a marketer and I'm concerned about these issues ethically, but I have to hit my goals. I have to hit my performance. I've got pressure on me. I can target on Facebook still, and Amazon, like you say, Nate, and I can target within Google. And I'm going to shift more money there. But how do I put those three pieces together? Because now I've got three big silos, and each of them may be ostensibly performing, but is there a way to tease out the performance across those giants? Jesse, any point of view on that? I know you do a lot of thinking on this.
Yeah, and I think to your point, 70% of digital ad dollars already sit there in those three platforms. But consumers spend less than 40% of their time there. So if that's the case, then you miss all these other opportunities to reach consumers throughout their day and throughout their buying journey, or whatever the objective of the campaign is. The reality is, yeah, I mean, you can't use full third-party tracking in Facebook. You can use click trackers, but you can't track impressions. You have to rely on the platforms reporting on impressions. You can't, for Amazon, for example, even if you want to run an OTT buy with them, if you want to use their first-party data, you have to do it through them, direct managed service, and rely on their reporting. You can't use your own reporting. You can't use full third-party tags there. You can run through the DSP and use full third-party tags if you want to run it programmatically, but you can't use their first party in that case. So they're definitely incentivizing you in a lot of ways to work directly with them. And it's really difficult to dedupe across those platforms. You conceivably could be reaching a consumer, 30 times across the three of them, and you won't know it. You'll have to rely on them individually.
Yeah, I think Jesse makes a lot of really good points here, right? And the walled gardens being able to grade their own homework is a problem for marketers. And the other piece of it too is, and Jesse just hit on that, is if you're reaching the same consumer and these platforms aren't talking to one another because you're buying them in silos, you're losing the ability to be as efficient as possible with your investment versus being able to control frequency and reach across all of these different channels and devices like you would be able to do in an open platform.
So we have a great question from Tammy W, who asks, am I wrong? Can browsers deny you certain access? And I think the question she's getting at is there's going to be an incentive, as you were saying, Nate, to try to capture that first party data. So are we going to see more intercepts? Are we going to enter a world that ironically has more friction on the internet because everyone's trying to get me to log in? Nate, what's your prediction with something like that?
Yeah, I think we're already seeing it. And I think if you're a publisher, it's table stakes now, because the value of understanding who's on your site is really important, and now more than ever. And so it's needed in order to be able to monetize and keep, journalism going, staff employed, all of those good things. So it's going to become table stakes for site engagement.
And taking it one step further too, relative to UID 2.0, I think a lot of what we're trying to solve, Ben, is that problem of friction and having to sign in repeatedly, right, on all these different websites. If you're going to Bloomberg, if you're going to ESPN.com, or some of the, the other NFL draft websites that Nate's going to leading up to the big day. But what UID is trying to solve for is creating a single sign-on where these publishers are signing on to be a part of UID. And if you're signing into ESPN and it's a Disney property, obviously, but if you're signing into ESPN, that doesn't mean that you need to sign in when you go to New York Times, because you'll already be able to have that login enabled through the single sign-on through UID.
Got it. So I think the big question, and we have 4 minutes left, and then we can entertain a few more questions, but I want to give everyone a chance to answer this one. I'm a marketer. I'm listening to this. It sounds okay. I get it. Cookies are going away. There's going to be some friction. There's going to be a lot of changes. It's all for a good cause, but I need a plan. And what I'm hearing as a marketer is it's going to be harder for me to target. Prices may go up. I may be getting pushed into a system where I can't track things as well. How do I plan for this? And I'm going to start with you, Jesse, but the question is, if you had 3 things to advise a marketer, her or him, to do in the coming 8 months left of the year to get ready, what would those 3 things be? Jesse, let's start with you.
Don't panic. Number 2, you don't necessarily need to have a knee-jerk reaction and pull out of the platforms and partners you've been working with. In order for them to continue to exist and thrive, they have to figure out a solution. And the way that they target may be different, but they will figure something out, all the major players. And the third would be, just anticipate that you are going to see some changes in your scale, some changes in your performance. Definitely put together a test and learn approach, have a roadmap on that. But it can involve new partners, but it doesn't need to be absent of your tried and true partners.
I like that. Tim, let me turn it over to you. If you had to advise a marketer 3 things to do in the coming 8 months to get ready for the cookie apocalypse, what might those 3 be?
Yeah, I think definitely what we alluded to a couple times already is just ensuring that you have your first party data solidified. Having clean rooms for data, ensuring you have that in a way that you can leverage that. So again, using a LiveRamp or with Unified 2.0, how that comes out, that's going to be really important. And just being able to make sure that you're collecting it, also that you're getting the permission to do so from the people. I think it's what we're doing also with this. I think this is what we would also recommend too, is communication. So communication to internally what's going on, to clients, to other advertisers. What we're doing, we're setting up a lot of time with our clients on a monthly basis of what's going on, because it changes every single day. So it's making sure you're keeping up to date with the changes, because today Google can announce Flock, and then next month they could announce something differently, or Unified 2.0 can change every single day too. So it's just really critical to do that and test and learn. Start testing other partners, seeing what's going on with them, and evaluate. And when you're doing that, evaluating the partners to make sure that they have things already going that don't need cookies. I think that's really important.
Thank you. Hey, Ben, what would you do? You got 3 things you're advising a CMO.
Yeah, I'm going to steal one from Jesse and one from Tim. The first is don't panic. The second is really have that first party data, the ability to collect it and leverage that for targeting. And then I think the last piece of it is I guess technically Tim said this too, is really test and learn, right? There are so many different solutions out there between IDL, UID 2.0, what Neustar is coming out with, Flock. So figuring out what's going to work best for you as a marketer, right? And I think that with UID in particular, right? Like we don't need to be, UID or any of these other solutions don't need to be 100% adopted by every single publisher, every single marketer, right? It's going to be sort of this interoperability that's going to be key. And I think keeping that in mind is going to really help marketers be able to figure this out. And then I guess the fourth thing is, there isn't a definitive end date, right, for cookies going away, right? It's not going to happen on January 1st, 2022. It may not happen in 2022 at all, right? That's still up for debate, I would argue. So I think just being as prepared as possible and educating yourself on all these different solutions is going to be really key.
Awesome. And Nate, the final word. What are the 3 things you would recommend, my friend?
Diversify. So your strategy should have any advertising strategy should have all sorts of elements. Cookies should not be the only element on your plan now, and you should continue to experiment. I'd say get help, and I think that a trend and hopefully a good trend that will come out of this is that agencies will, as they continue to evolve, their methodology becomes more important than ever. The ability to help brands tie metrics together, understand and evolve with the technology ecosystem is a huge opportunity for ad agencies. And then I think the last thing is have fun with this. No one got into marketing because they just wanted to push piles of money from one place to another. We all got into marketing because it was a lot more fun than banking. And don't get stuck in, oh my goodness, my cost per acquisition is going to go down here. Have fun, get creative, and this is what marketing is all about, is changing and respecting the consumer. And so this is, I think, a really exciting time because change, leads to innovation.
All right, I love that. And I've got one final question, then we'll open up for Q&A. Lightning round, what is your favorite non-digital cookie? Jesse, non-digital favorite cookie recipe? What would it be?
Milano's for sure.
Ben, what's your favorite?
I'm gonna go double stuffed Oreos. Can't beat them.
Nice. Tim?
Classic chocolate chip.
Yeah, all right. Nate?
Peanut butter.
Peanut butter. I'm kind of a ginger snap guy. I know it's old school, but all right. Well, thank you. This team has been amazing. And everyone on the call, I just want to reiterate, if you need resources, we work with Media Associates, a media planning agency. We've done some publishing on this. Nate works with Oracle. Oracle is a treasure trove of white papers. I highly recommend you go to oracle.com, check it out. The Trade Desk is working on the Unified ID 2.0. Did I get that right, Ben? And you have a lot of rich content there talking about these issues. So hit the web. And we all love you, Google. We're not taking it personal. So I'm going to turn it over to my friend, Ken. Thank you.
Well, hey, that was great. Did you get to many of the questions here, or do we have stuff that's unanswered?
I think we got through them all on the fly, man. I think we did.
That's great. So I want to thank the panelists. You guys did an amazing job. The feedback is really excellent in the comments. So thank you so much. Thank you, Ben, for organizing it. Ben from the Trade Desk, thank you. And Nate, thanks for carrying the flag for Oracle. I agree with what Ben Kuhn said, that you guys publish some amazing content. And also there's Ben's firm has a great white paper on the topic as well. I just encourage folks, if you have an interest in membership in the AMA, please check our website at amasouthernct.org. And also our president-elect, Richard Connor, is membership chair this year as well, and would be really interested in talking with folks that want to join or have questions or are interested in volunteer opportunities. You also could reach our Bob Trinka about volunteer opportunities as well. So thanks, everyone. Have a great evening, and a replay will be available for folks. We'll publicize that very shortly. Thanks a lot. Good night, everyone.
Bye.